Still, people aren't fools. They began to sense something was off.
So all these people just happened to lose their way in broad daylight and end up at this countryside lodge?
Maybe we've been bewitched or something.
Hey, don't say such unlucky things.
The more people there are, the braver they get. Even while bringing up ghosts, the group began glancing around the room, like it was some kind of curiosity show.
Come to think of it, this place...
Looks pretty fancy, doesn't it? Like one of those mansions rich families had in every neighborhood back when we were kids.
Oh, look over there. That's a gold frame, isn't it?
On one side of the living room was a large framed picture, its frame seemingly made of real gold. But what caught my attention wasn't the frame. It was what was inside.
The rabbit bakes in the kitchen. The deer is caught in the backyard. The pigeon is fattened in the bedroom. The lamb is sliced in the living room. Boing, boing, the sound of hopping with laughter. The wooden floors beneath go bam, bam. The family gathers round.
That's blatant foreshadowing. Whew. Could it be a metaphor for the upcoming murders? It sure looks that way. Yet no one here seemed to be particularly interested in horror or mystery genres. The university students, claiming to be part of a hiking club, chuckled amongst themselves and even pocketed an ivory trinket from the side table near the sofa. If one of them ends up being the first body tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. Just as I thought that, there was a sound from the kitchen at the back. The shadow of the back door swinging open fell across the room. And then, a figure slowly stepped through the open door. The person, cloaked in an old, tattered hoodie with their face hidden and body hunched, greeted us.
Good afternoon, visitors of the lodge. I am the caretaker of this mountain lodge, here to serve you during your stay.
Their voice was deep and formal, and they bowed politely, speaking in an old-fashioned Seoul accent. Oh, a suspicious staff member. Exactly. This is the classic butler of the murder mansion. Unlike my deadpan expression, the others seemed caught off guard by the dissonance between the caretaker's shabby appearance and refined speech.
Excuse me, we're not really guests. We just got lost and we're hoping to use a phone.
That's not true. You've come to the right place. You're here to exchange the cassette tapes, aren't you? The ones in your pockets.
As if hypnotized, they all reached into their pockets and pulled out objects. They were all holding old ivory-colored cassette tapes with the titles scrawled out, just like Baek Deok-soo's.
How does everyone have those?
The master of this lodge was a very wealthy man. During his lifetime, he distributed those cassette tapes far and wide, and he made a promise.
What kind of promise?
If you visit my lodge with one of these cassette tapes, I shall trade it for anything I possess. That was his promise. And even in death, that promise remains valid.
An inheritance exchange. What a tempting bait. Or maybe it's so obvious that it works too well. Money has that certain magical power, after all. Even as they laughed nervously, everyone's eyes reflexively darted to the display cases full of gold and celadon treasures. The middle-aged man let out a booming laugh, half-jokingly grabbing the golden frame as if testing his luck.
Huh, so can I just take whatever I want?
The lodge caretaker responded smoothly and politely.
Of course. However, you will only be able to take it with you after 3 days.
Entrants are promised significant monetary rewards if they stay within the disaster for a designated period. The designated period can range from a maximum of 1 week to a minimum of 12 hours, tailored to the entrant's capacity to endure for the promised reward.
We give you 3 days to deliberate, so you won't waste your one and only opportunity to exchange.
I don't need time to think.
Then you may leave now. However, the exchange will no longer be possible.
The married couple clamped their mouths shut. It seemed the thought of leaving behind free money was too bitter to swallow. One of the student hikers in the group raised their hand from the back.
Excuse me, so can we ask for something outrageous? Like, give me all the inheritance?
The hiker's playful tone vanished in an instant.
Can I ask for ownership of the lodge itself?
The group's expression shifted. Now they want to believe. The uneasy chill in the air was gone, replaced with a sense of fortune, as if the kind of monetary windfall they'd only read about on the internet was suddenly within reach. Once the caretaker produced documents, including the will, their skepticism transformed into certainty.
This looks legit.
Even the cursing married couple's demeanor changed.
Forget the weekend trip, let's tough it out. Worst case, we can call the police, right?
Exactly. Wow, maybe this tape has some kind of charm on it, like from a shaman's talisman. It's crazy how everyone ended up here.
The lodge caretaker even gave everyone time to make phone calls. After finishing their calls, the group's mood had turned lively, as if they were part of some grand event. Caretaker, observing them, bowed deeply.
When so many visitors arrive at once, the order of exchange becomes very important.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like if the first person demands all the inheritance, it's game over for everyone else.
Therefore, priority will be given to those with the most cassette tapes.
The group immediately glanced around at one another. The 3 university students exchanged quick looks amongst themselves. If grouped together, they had the most tapes.
And wait, are we supposed to buy tapes off each other now?
I am merely explaining the rules. It is not mandatory. You are free to negotiate your own exchange conditions as you see fit. The order is important, after all.
A tense, meaningful silence passed between them.
Shall I prepare your rooms, then? There are suitable bedrooms upstairs.
Excuse me, hold on.
Baek Deok-soo's voice cut through the group.
I might have to leave due to urgent matters. Could you tell me the way out of here?
But that didn't happen.
Entrants will inevitably find themselves isolated at the disaster site for various reasons. The most common would be due to abnormal weather conditions such as typhoons, heavy snowfall, or landslides.
A torrential downpour has caused a landslide outside, burying the roads. Thankfully, the electricity remains functional, so your stay will be unaffected.
Baek Deok-soo turned to me with an expression that practically screamed, "We're fucked." Now that things had reached this point, no one would be able to leave until everything that was meant to happen had unfolded. Meanwhile, I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how to survive this without losing my head. At least one small comfort was that there wouldn't be any ghosts. Just a serial killer. And wasn't it obvious? Every horror movie and mystery novel loves to use this twist. And ghost stories are no different. One entrant will take on a special role within the narrative, embodying the predator archetype, and this individual is often referred to as the serial killer. I've got to find and avoid the person who would become the killer. This individual will firmly believe that they are inheriting the legendary murderer's legacy and undergo mental and physical transformation. Unless I could try a slightly different approach. As I stroked my chin, I noticed the civil servant quietly leaving the group.
I'll step outside to check the weather.
I followed the civil servant out to the veranda. The wind and rain were growing fierce, darkening the surroundings and splashing enough to dampen our clothes. The downpour seemed loud enough to mask any conversation. Carefully shielding my notepad from the rain, I showed him a message.
Excuse me, are you the person who bought the cookies? I'm wondering if I might have mistaken you for someone else.
Fortunately, the civil servant didn't feign ignorance.
Yes, that's correct.
But he looked me up and down, as if assessing me. I glanced around, pretending to check the area, and ensured no one was watching us before scribbling another note, this time with a tense expression.
I'm sorry, but is this some kind of strange situation? It's just odd that only people carrying cassette tapes got lost and ended up here. Do you think it's a ghost or something?
Considering that he already knew I had experience with paranormal phenomena. After all, I'd sold him food tied to ghost stories. This level of questioning shouldn't seem out of place. The real issue is whether he thinks I entered this place intentionally. I'd much rather be treated as an innocent civilian. Depending on his response, I'd decide how to position myself moving forward. Honestly, he's most likely to give a safe answer like I'm not sure yet. The civil servant hesitated briefly before asking me,
How did you come across the cassette tape?
Actually, I don't have one myself. It's my colleague who has one. It gave me a bad feeling, so I told him to throw it away. But we ended up here anyway after getting on the bus.
The civil servant rested a hand on his chin, silent for a moment.
Do you often find yourself in situations?
I forced a sheepish smile, pretending to be awkward. After another moment of hesitation, he continued,
I am, well, something like a government agent.
He's telling me this much.
Really? Like a ghost hunting 007?
The expression on his face screamed, This is not the time to be impressed.
At any rate, this is indeed a supernatural phenomenon. Be cautious. As much as possible, stay close to me, or move in groups of at least 3 if it can't be avoided.
He's treating me like an even more harmless civilian than I expected. I wasn't sure why, but this was good. I quickly responded.
Thank you, but what about the others?
The civil servant answered firmly.
You don't need to worry about them.
Would it be okay if I told my colleague?
Glancing toward the living room, the civil servant lowered his voice and spoke softly, as if revealing a massive secret.
There is a killer among us.
I already knew, of course, but I couldn't let that show. Feigning shock, I hastily scribbled another note.
A killer? How do you know that, sir?
This mountain lodge is no ordinary place. It's never been publicly disclosed, but similar incidents have occurred here multiple times. Guests were murdered by a killer.
Ah, a storied, legendary site where nightmares of the past are recreated. Truly a fine preference. Now's not the time, Mr. Host.
No matter how close you may be to someone, don't trust them. And under no circumstances should you open your door while alone in your room.
Usually, isn't it the person who barricades themselves in a room who ends up dying first? Regardless, I felt I'd confirmed a few key facts about both the civil servant and this ghost story. After expressing my gratitude and bidding him good night, I left the veranda. I felt a bit more at ease as I headed to my assigned room. I had made up my mind about what to do. I began inspecting the room. I was looking for something specific. Opening the wardrobe, I found 2 reasonably large, one-handed axes hanging as decorative pieces. It was terrifying and exhausting to carry, but there was no choice. This is going to be so very fun. Now that things had come to this, I might as well strike first. Gripping one of the axes, I made my decision. Serial killer, fine. Let me have a go at it. Baek Deok-soo opened his eyes. Or rather, it would be more accurate to say that he hadn't slept a wink. Ever since entering Horizon Mountain Lodge, his nerves had been on edge, searching for a way to leave this place alive and intact. Half of his efforts were spent trying to stay on Kim Soleum's good side, carefully walking on eggshells to gauge the guy's mood. He felt no shame about it. It was necessary for survival. Even now, as he debated whether to visit Kim Soleum's room, it was for the same reason. He thought to himself that he needed information, anything he could use. Was Kim Soleum really a lunatic? More specifically, why had he saved him? Baek Deok-soo already knew the truth. There had been multiple opportunities at the exhibition for Kim Soleum to kill him or use him as a scapegoat, but he hadn't. Sure, he had been messed with a few times, but in the end, he jumped to the conclusion that Kim Soleum probably did it for fun. It was only because keeping him alive would make things more unpredictable and entertaining for that bastard. Baek Deok-soo had never encountered such a madman in his life before. He doubted Kim Soleum would lie about something important. With a strange sort of faith, he opened his door. Something stood in front of it. The now darkened lodge was steeped in shadows, making it difficult to recognize the figure immediately. It was a man of similar height to himself, startled but strangely relieved. Better him than a stranger. At least Kim Soleum wouldn't try to kill him. But as Baek Deok-soo's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he noticed something in Kim Soleum's hand. He almost rubbed his one remaining eye in disbelief before a plausible explanation struck him.
And that's for self-defense against the killer, right?
But then, another thought entered Baek Deok-soo's mind regarding the texts Kim Soleum had been sending.
Watch out for serial killers.
He wondered if those texts weren't warnings, but a prediction of the future. The axe came down on his head. A couple leaving their room heard a melody faintly blending with the heavy rain.
Isn't that the song that played when our car's GPS broke?
Omo, it does sound like it. Is this some local radio station?
Breathing in the damp, eerie morning air, they held their cassette tape tightly like a treasure as they passed through the hallway to the kitchen. They saw something stuffed into the kitchen hearth. It looked like someone had detonated fireworks and toys inside, charring the area completely black. Among the dark red ashes, 2 stick-like objects jutted out, bent at odd angles. At the end of those sticks, the sneakers were partially burned, still clinging to what used to be a person's feet.
Oh my god, is that a person? Egu, what is this? What's happening? Egu!
The couple's screams of horror echoed through the lodge, quickly drawing the others downstairs. One by one, the others joined the chaos, their faces pale.
What's going?
The students, the middle-aged driver. No one was immune to the panic. One person, claiming earlier to have a sore throat and only communicating via notes, collapsed to the ground, his face drained of color. But weren't there two people who said they were office workers? The couple pointed at the burned feet sticking out of the hearth.
The young man who came with you, is it him? The one with the eye patch?
The remaining office worker stared at the scorched sneakers, covering his mouth, and gave a small nod. It was a person they had talked to just yesterday. As the realization set in, cries and screams filled the room again.
Call 119 right now.
What the hell is this?
I told you these old kitchens were dangerous. One small fire and look what happens.
But in their hearts a small voice whispered doubts. Was it really an accident? Could a fire burn only a person, leaving everything else untouched and in such a horrific state? Still, in a state of panic, the group scrambled for their phones. A collective chill ran down their spines.
T, the phone isn't working. There's no dial tone.
Where's the caretaker? Someone just died here.
But the caretaker, who had promised to take good care of them, was nowhere to be found, as if he'd vanished into thin air. The dark, rain-soaked mountains surrounded the lodge. Inside the lodge, only the group and the humming remained. Outside, an unrelenting downpour lashed the area, and there were signs that a landslide had occurred overnight, burying the bus stop in debris.
The road, it's completely buried.
That's when the group began to realize something was seriously wrong.
I swear that thing, it was moving earlier.
Near the hearth where the charred remains lay, a small, old analog cassette player emitted the humming sound. One of the students switched off the cassette player and pulled something from inside it. A worn, ivory-colored tape. The pale-faced office worker shakily pulled out his notebook, his trembling hands scribbling quickly.
This looks like the cassette Baek Deok-soo had.
And that's when the nightmare truly began. The lodge's caretaker had apparently prepared a neat meal of soup and rice in advance, but nobody dared to touch it, as if by mutual agreement. Instead, they nibbled on energy bars and snacks they'd brought themselves, wandering around the lodge in a futile search for a signal to make their phones work. Unsurprisingly, there was no success. In the oppressive rain, the isolated mountain lodge felt suffocating and ominous, severed from any external connection.
This is driving me crazy.
One of the university students, frustrated by his unresponsive social media apps, angrily tapped at his phone screen before switching it off in irritation.
Dude, you're such a fucking scaredy cat.
They even took a few photos of the scene, treating it like a twisted joke, though they didn't seem to have much appetite as they left their calorie bars and chocolates untouched. Despite their mockery, they weren't as calm as they appeared. They relied on their numbers to feel secure. There's 3 of us, after all. Even if someone tried to kill them, they reasoned, no one would target a large group first. They'll go for someone alone, or the stragglers. That thought seemed to put them somewhat at ease. One student turned to chat with his friend, but a peanut-filled chocolate bar was suddenly extended in front of him. When he looked up, he saw the pale-faced office worker holding out his notebook.
Would you like some? I don't think I can eat it.
The student replied curtly, and his friend beside him snickered.
Dude, he can't eat peanuts.
The office worker apologized silently, retreating to the sofa with a dejected air. Wasn't he the one who'd been introduced as a supervisor? At first, he'd seemed quite intimidating, but after witnessing his colleague's death, he looked utterly deflated. He now gave off the impression of someone who would crumble under even the slightest pressure.
Sure, but man, this is too much.
Meanwhile, the other 2 students went outside for a smoke. The office worker, still fiddling with his unresponsive phone, cast a dark glance at the hearth before heading upstairs. And just like that, the room grew silent. One student was left alone, uneasily shifting in his seat. In the movies, this is the part where someone gets attacked. He tapped his foot anxiously, glancing around the room with a wary expression. The presence of a jackknife in his pocket gave him some reassurance, but not for long. Shit, why'd they go off on their own? Unable to bear it any longer, he decided to go looking for his friends in the backyard. Gripping the jackknife tightly, he quickened his pace, unnerved by the sensation of something prickling at his back. He pushed open the back door to the kitchen, which led to the yard. A damp, musty smell hit him immediately. They're probably under the roof somewhere. Surely they wouldn't stand in the rain to smoke, right? With that thought, he headed toward a storage shed connected by a covered walkway, but as he walked, a peculiar smell caught his attention. Something metallic and sharp. It smelled like rust. Perhaps from the rain leaking into old tools in the shed. That was his assumption, at least, as he rounded the corner.
Hey, Park Kyung-soo.
And then, an overwhelming metallic stench hit, enough to numb the nose. Inside the backyard shed was an old construction-grade grinding machine. It seemed like the machine had been used not for wood, but for something else entirely. What should have been sawdust spewing from the discharge chute was instead shredded flesh. Fragments of torn clothes, blood-soaked meat, and crushed bone were scattered messily across the floor. What the hell is this? For a moment, his brain refused to process the scene, rejecting the horrifying reality. Then, a beat later, the truth hit him like a tidal wave. He had found his friends, turned into minced meat. As panic overtook him, vomiting and screams erupted from his mouth. And then, another sound joined in. The sound from the cassette tape. The student spun around and bolted, running madly back into the lodge. Fear and cold terror chased him down to the tips of his hair.
Hey, why are you running around?
The student flailed wildly, slapping away the hand that had grabbed his shoulder.
Don't touch me, you bastard.
Whoa, what the hell?
The bewildered faces of the other lodge residents stared back at him, and there was one thing they all had in common. If the psycho responsible for this was targeting the tapes, and that's what caused all of this. The student frantically rummaged through his pocket and pulled out his tape.
Here, look at this. Look!
His eyes were bloodshot and spit flew as he shouted.
I'm throwing this away. Take it. I don't want it, okay? I've given it up, damn it. I've given it up.
He flung the tape onto the ground, then bolted upstairs to his room, slamming the door behind him. Only when he locked the door did he finally catch his breath. Anxiety darted his eyes around the room. His mind was plagued by the sight of shredded flesh and broken bones, pounding in his skull like a drumbeat. Should he build a barricade with furniture in front of the door? No, that would block his escape route. He glanced at an old lacquered wardrobe in the room, hesitating before pressing himself against the wall beside it, gripping his jackknife tightly. He stared intently at the door. As his back rested against the wall, his breathing began to settle. Just try it. Force your way in, I dare you. If someone tried, he'd fucking scream bloody murder while swinging his knife. People would come rushing in, and surely he'd be saved. He just had to stay alert. He muttered to himself like a madman, his voice trembling. The next morning, the student was found in his room, the door wide open to welcome others. His body was grotesquely swollen, like an overstuffed sausage, bloated from an allergic reaction. The hiking club had been wiped out entirely. In just one day, an office worker and 3 students had become corpses, plunging the remaining people into total terror.
It's the inheritance! Someone's killing people to take more of the inheritance! Yeah! I'm sure of it! They're trying to silence us all so they can keep the tapes without any trouble!
That guy, the caretaker, that fucker was sketchy as hell. He looked like a psycho. It's a ghost. We're all haunted. Ha ha ha.
A middle-aged man shouted like a madman, then pushed past the others and ran outside. Thunder resounded at just the right moment. No, it wasn't just thunder. There was another sound mixed in. Startled by the deafening noise, everyone turned toward the window. The civil servant murmured grimly. The landslide had conveniently struck again. Swept away by the rushing debris, the deranged, middle-aged man disappeared down the mountain slope. His screams faded as he was buried in the muddy earth below. Thunder replaced the humming as it roared outside the lodge, lightning flickering across the stormy sky. A suffocating silence hung over the frozen group of survivors. 4 people remained. The couple who had spent the day scouring the lodge for a way to contact the outside world returned to their room, panting. They'd found no means of escape, but they had discovered something else.
Fuck, shut the hell up and breathe quietly, you moron.
The husband, introduced earlier as the wife's partner, shoved her head roughly before darting out of the living room and up the stairs to the second-floor hallway. As he ascended, someone cautiously exiting their room happened to meet his bloodshot gaze, startled. He was calling out to the office worker who had been communicating through written notes because of his sore throat. Startled, he quickly fumbled for his notebook to write something. but the man standing before him was faster, shaking something in his hand.
This gold frame.
It was the ornate golden picture frame that had been hanging in the living room. Eyes wild, the man jabbed a finger at the text inscribed inside the frame.
The rabbit bakes in the kitchen. The deer is caught in the backyard. The pigeon is fattened in the bedroom. The lamb is sliced in the living room.
This is how people are being killed.
The man shouted, voice shaking as he pieced it together. A person roasted in the kitchen, ground in the backyard, and bloated in the room.
The lodge caretaker or whoever is messing with us. This could all be staged. Maybe we're being broadcast somewhere. Or maybe... No, they're toying with us, that's for sure.
The employee widened his eyes, startled by the revelation. Seeing his reaction, the man grew even more convinced and raised his voice further.
The next one is the living room. Someone's going to get sliced up in the living room. I'm sure of it. We need to find a way out before it's too.
Surprisingly observant, Brawn.
That was the last word the man ever said. A throbbing headache greeted him as he regained consciousness. His voice was muffled. He realized there was a gag in his mouth. He screamed as loud as he could. But the reason for his terror wasn't just the damp, moldy smell of the basement he found himself in, or the pitch-black darkness that made it impossible to see more than a few inches at. It was the severed head lying right next to his. The pale, lifeless face rested on a silver tray mere inches from his nose. He felt his sanity slipping. Tears, snot, and cold sweat poured down his face as he desperately screamed for help, though the gag swallowed every sound.
Scared? Try to bear with it. I'm holding back too.
A calm, composed voice responded from somewhere nearby. The man rolled his eyes frantically, trying to distance himself from the head as he looked up. The office worker. Dressed in black sweats, the younger man frowned as he gazed down at him. Then, as if in disdain, he looked at the bloodied work gloves in his hand before letting out a sigh and slipping them back on. Next, he picked up an axe.
Why is it that people always scream first, even when they already know what's going to happen? It just tires everyone involved. Let's not waste our energy unnecessarily.
This monster was the killer. The captive wanted desperately to negotiate, plead, fight back, do anything to survive, but his bound body and gagged mouth gave him no options. Tears streamed uncontrollably down his face.
I think I've heard that physical and emotional pain can be alleviated a bit by screaming. Or, well, something like that.
The office worker's voice was dry, his tone almost clinical as he inspected the blade of the axe. The edge gleamed as it caught the dim light.
Reasonable enough, I suppose. Still, I don't find it particularly satisfying.
He adjusted his grip, a gleaming arc in the air. Silence enveloped the basement. 3 people remained.